We all know what's done in the dark will eventually come to the light. That day has finally come for the alleged abusers within the Southern Baptist Convention. 14 million strong around the country. This comes after a new poll and report spells out the horrible details. It claims the church turned a blind eye after victims of sexual abuse tried to come forward. Some of the victims were children. One person says he was as young as 12 years old when a youth minister sexually assaulted him. The report is 288 pages long. It claims these cover-ups go back 20 years. My guests say the church totally failed in protecting its members.
Eduardo, obviously your focus has been on the Catholic Church. Are you surprised by this news and this report from the Southern Baptist Convention?
We've been expecting this for a long time, Isiah. This investigative report conducted by Guidepost Solutions found that top SBC leaders stonewalled and actually denegated survivors of clergy sex abuse for over 20 years. And all of this cover-up was done simply to protect the reputation of the church and of its leaders. We know that these victims repeatedly repeated their allegations to as many people as they could, and all of this fell on deaf ears. And I'm telling you, Isiah, doesn't this sound really familiar? Just change SBC with Catholic Church and change top SBC officials with deacons and bishops and cardinals, and the story is the same.
All right. Dr. Ruth, is the story the same? And how concerning is this to you that they have ignored so many people, this 14 million member congregation out there?
Yes, indeed, it is concerning. It's heartbreaking. I think as a pastor and as a minister, anytime we hear things like this, we just hold our hearts because the ministry is difficult enough already. But this organization, although it's a venerable organization, has a history of a racist past and also not being very friendly to women, even in terms of women in the ministry. So there was a report that came out a few years back when Paige Patterson was the president, and someone reported something that had happened, a woman did. And he basically took a boys will be boys approach. And unfortunately, I think that this investigation could have happened a long time ago. And my heart goes out to these women.
Dr. Cofield, when you take a look at a report like this, do you think this organization will act on this report, or was this about a show?
So, Isiah, one of the things that I have learned over the years teaching on various levels is I never allow students to grade their own papers. Whenever they grade their own papers, they always give themselves an A.
A plus.
And I think at the end of the day, authorities need to be called in and need to be brought in to conduct these investigations. Even the investigative group that was formed out of Guidepost, I really believe that Guidepost is just scratching the surface of just a number of men and women, many of whom were minors who were abused in a variety of ways. And so I'm hoping that this does not become just a show, because, you know, the idea, one of the things that was presented in the article was this idea of autonomy. And autonomy is the greatest gift of non-denominationally tied churches, but it's also the greatest curse. But at the end of the day, everybody is accountable to the legal system. And I think that's the issue that we need to focus on. I'm really heartbroken that these people over and over again went through this abuse, reported it, and nobody called the authorities. Nobody said, we're going to stand up for the victims. We're going to stand up for the truth. They're trying to protect a shield that, in all honesty, they can't protect when you talk about the sins of man and the humanity that we all wrestle with. At the end of the day, when we fall and people are victims of our failures, they need to be addressed in the most expeditious way possible.
And Eduardo, is that that's the piece of the puzzle that's missing now? Investigators from outside coming in the SBC, getting involved, looking to file criminal charges if need be.
Definitely, Isaiah. What needs to happen is that these investigations need to happen as quickly as possible, and the perpetrators need to be brought to justice and taken out of our social system as quickly as possible also. And what I wish that we would learn from the scandals of the Catholic Church as we now move on to this scandal with the SBC is that with this investigative report, it's going to lead to many investigations that will drag on for years and years. Many people will be involved as they try to lay blame as to who was doing the cover-up and what were they doing. And in all of this, what we must remember is that the people that we forget about are the victims, us victims that are sitting at home suffering with PTSD and with this baggage that we have to carry for the rest of our lives as victims of sexual abuse. What we need to learn from the Me Too movement and from what has happened in the Catholic Church going into this this scandal is let's treat the victims first and put them first and worry about the perpetrators when the time comes. But please help us with the victims.
And Dr. Ruth, how damaging will this be to the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention, or is it not even a chink in the armor of the organization?
Well, I think it's huge for this information to come out, and it's coming out just before the annual convention, as I understand. So this really should be talked about. It should be aired out. And just another note, it's not only SBC. There's a lot that goes on in a lot of churches. SBC happens to be the biggest, and they happen to be on right now. But this is a call. This is a warning that there needs to be a lot of shaking in our pulpits and in our ministries and in the power structures in churches so that people are not abused. The church should be a safe place for all people, and especially the women.
And Dr. Cofield, do you think this will affect how people see the church, how people attend the church, how people sit in those seats?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question that it has affected the personal spiritual journey of those who have been abused. Although there are some who have shown tremendous strength and have not confused God with the people who represent God and have been able to push through that. But I think that's a big, big hurdle that we're asking people to jump and get over. At the end of the day, I think it's going to adversely affect the church. And I think Dr. Ruth is so right. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We really need to talk about abuse. We need to talk about the abuse of power. We need to talk about manipulation. I mean, there's so many things that we need to deal with. We should not have seen perpetrators literally just spread across the body of Christ. They should have been addressed, should have been dealt with, and those people should have been prosecuted.
Straight out of the playbook of the Catholic Church, like we saw there. We want to thank you all for joining us here on the Factor Uncensored tonight. We'll continue to follow this report on the SBC. Thank you all for joining us.